Nelayan membutuhkan perahu yang berkualitas agar mereka bisa kembali produktif. Melalui program Susi Cek Ombak, saya Susi Pujiastuti mengajak Anda berdonasi melalui rekening Yayasan Benih Baik Indonesia, Nelayan Berseri Laut Lestari.
World News, Senin hingga Jumat live jam 11:30 malam. Berbagi cerita seputar masalah kesehatan langsung dari sumbernya.
Saya di CAT. Di CAT hasilnya kelihatan bahwa pada penyempitan di pembuluh darah saya 85%.
Itu dokter bilang tekanan darah kamu tinggi.
Sakit di pundak, sakit nyeri sekali. Setelah itu kok lama-lama sampai ke belakang.
Bagaimana cara agar kesehatan kita tetap terjaga? Apa saja solusinya? Saksikan Go Healthy di Metro TV.
After the attack on Pearl Harbor that brought us into the war. And that is the B-25 with its 17
delighted fans on the ground as it finally took to the sky over Jones Beach State Park in Long Island, New York. Performances included the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds, the Air Force A-10 Thunderbolt, the Golden Knights, and others.
Here on Long Island, coming overhead right now with the invasion stripes on it, is the C-47.
Hello, you're watching World News Only on Metro Globe Networks live from Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm Iqbal Himawan, and here are our top stories for tonight. We are updating you with a manhunt is continuing into Memorial Day for 3 masked suspects who opened fire early Sunday morning outside a Miami banquet hall. Dozens of medical workers in rebel-held northwest Syria protested a decision to grant President Bashar Assad's government a seat on the executive board of the WHO. They said Assad is responsible for bombing hospitals and clinics across the war-ravaged country. But first, firefighting tugboats continue spraying a burning ship, Singapore-flagged MV Express Pearl, anchored off the Sri Lankan capital, as Navy personnel began clearing debris from the vessel. Up to Monday, firefighting tugboats continued spraying a burning ship, MV Express Pearl, anchored off the Sri Lankan capital of Colombo, as Navy personnel began clearing debris from the vessel. The fire on the ship has been burning since May 20, ravaging the 5-month ship. The vessel's 25-member crew evacuated on May 25 after an explosion. It includes Philippine, Chinese, Indian, and Russian nationals. The Navy believes the fire was caused by chemicals transported on the Singapore-flagged ship. A special police team has been investigating the incident. A light plane was forced to make an emergency landing on a freeway west of Los Angeles, California. A plane was forced to make an emergency landing on Monday on a freeway west of Los Angeles, California. KABC TV reported the light aircraft took off from nearby Van Nuys Airport before the pilot had to bring the plane down on the 101 highway in Agoura Hills. Aerial video showed traffic building up as the plane was moved off the road. No report of serious injuries. A manhunt is continuing into Memorial Day for 3 masked suspects who opened fire early Sunday morning outside a Miami banquet hall. 2 men died and 21 others were wounded in a shooting, which authorities said had spread terror and grief through their communities. On Monday, police released a snippet from a surveillance video showed a white SUV driving into an alley at the strip mall in northwest Miami-Dade. 3 people get out of the vehicle, 1 gripping a handgun, while the other 2 carried what police described as assault-style rifles. The Miami-Dade Police Department's director, Alfredo Freddy Ramirez III, told the Miami Herald, The shooters waited between 20 and 40 minutes before attacking shortly after midnight. The SUV used in the shooting was later found Monday, submerged in a canal about 8 miles or 13 kilometers east of the banquet hall. It was reported stolen 2 weeks ago. Let's moving on to Middle East. Dozens of medical workers in rebel-held northwest Syria on Monday protested a decision to grant President Bashar Assad's government a seat on the executive board of the World Health Organization. They said Assad is responsible for bombing hospitals and clinics across the war-ravaged country. The decision to give Syria a seat came a decade into the country's devastating civil war that has left untold numbers of civilians, including many healthcare workers, dead and injured. The selection of Syria at a little-noticed session Saturday of the WHO's annual assembly, which brings together all member states of the UN Health Agency, has evoked outrage in opposition-held Idlib province. Rifat Farhat, a senior health official in Idlib, said the move contradicts all international and humanitarian laws. Syria was among 12 WHO member states that were chosen to appoint new members for the 34-member board in an assembly vote that faced no debate or opposition. A convoy carrying International Criminal Court prosecutor Fatou Bensouda was cheered by thousands on Tuesday as it traveled through South Darfur, Sudan. Bensouda has urged Sudan's transitional government to hand over suspects wanted for war crimes and genocide in the Darfur conflict, including former Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. He has been in jail in Khartoum since his ouster in April 2019 and is facing several trials in Sudanese courts related to his 3 decades of authoritarian rule. The ICC charged al-Bashir with war crimes and genocide for allegedly masterminding the campaign of attacks in Darfur. The conflict in Sudan's Darfur region broke out when rebels from the territory's ethnic Central and Sub-Saharan African community launched an insurgency in 2003, complaining of oppression by the Arab-dominated government in Khartoum. Sudanese prosecutors started last year their own investigation into the Darfur conflict. Moving on to other news, Russian authorities on Tuesday ramped up their pressure on political dissent ahead of parliamentary elections, arresting one opposition activist and raiding the homes of several others. Andrei Pivovarov, the head of the Open Russia movement, which dissolved itself last week, was pulled off a plane at St. Petersburg airport late Monday and was to be taken to Krasnodar in southern Russia Tuesday as part of a criminal probe against him. Also on Tuesday, police raided the country home of opposition political candidate Dmitry Gudkov, a former lawmaker who aspires to run for parliament in September. At least 2 of his associates, his former assistant Alexander Solovyov and his chief of staff Vitaly Venediktov, also had their homes searched. The moves are part of a multi-pronged crackdown in Russia that is widely seen as an effort to prevent any opposition groups from mounting a challenge to the ruling United Russia Party in September's parliamentary elections. In New Zealand, some farms and major bridges in Canterbury region were damaged because of a flood. Several hundred people were told to leave their homes and schools were closed during the flooding. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said that the top priority was getting transport links working again, although it was unclear how long it would take to fix the bridge that connects the town of Ashburton to the main highway south. Crews hoped to have an alternative route to the town ready by the end of the day. Ardern said farmers had been particularly hard hit with lost feet, broken fences, and debris spread across their fields. As much as 40 centimeters of rain fell over 3 days in the Canterbury region, prompting authorities to declare a state of emergency and the government to allocate 500,000 New Zealand dollars toward cleanup efforts. Coming up on World News, Peru announced a sharp increase in its COVID-19 death toll. There are more than 180,000 fatalities since the pandemic hit the country. Stay with us.
Banyak orang belum memeriksakan kondisi kesehatannya secara rutin.
Juga banyak orang yang kemudian mengkhawatirkan masalah biaya sehingga medical check-up pun urung dilakukan.
Dr. Laser bekerja sama dengan Rumah Sakit Mitra Keluarga memberikan layanan medical check-up kepada Anda pemirsa Metro TV.
Manfaatkan kesempatan medical check-up screening jantung dan juga screening stroke diskon hingga 50%.
Dan pengumuman kode voucher diskon medical check-up akan ada di akhir acara.
Go healthy, cara tepat, hidup sehat.
Berbagi cerita seputar masalah kesehatan langsung dari sumbernya.
Saya di CAT. Di CAT hasilnya kelihatan bahwa pada penyempitan di pembuluh darah saya 85%.
Itu dokter bilang tekanan darah kamu tinggi.
Sakit di pundak.
Sakit nyeri sekali. Setelah itu kok lama-lama sampai ke belakang.
Bagaimana cara agar kesehatan kita tetap terjaga? Apa saja solusinya? Saksikan Go Healthy di Metro TV. Selama tidak menjaga lingkungan, jangan mimpi lihat yang indah. Kurangi sampah dari rumah mulai sekarang. Vaksin untuk Indonesia. Setiap Jumat jam 8 malam.
Kesehatan itu adalah hal penting yang harus kita jaga loh.
Saat ini, teknologi pun ikut mendukung kesehatan.
Supaya semakin sehat dan bugar.
Bersama para pakar kesehatan, kami mengulas kesehatan yang berbalut teknologi.
Simak Go Healthy
di Metro
TV.
You're back on World News. In Malaysia, malls and most businesses closed on Tuesday as the country began its second near total lockdown to tackle a worsening coronavirus pandemic that has put its healthcare system on the verge of the collapse. Large-scale lockdown is applied after daily infections breached 8,000 on Friday and soared to a record 9,020 on Saturday. Most business activities will be closed for 2 weeks until June 14, except for 17 essential sectors. Schools have already moved to online classes and inter-district travel banned since early May. Restaurants can stay open for pickup and delivery services. Only 2 in a household can travel to buy necessities within a 10-kilometer radius and 3 for medical reasons. Residents can jog in their neighborhood, but no cycling is allowed. In Kuala Lumpur, police checked vehicles entering the city. Some 800 roadblocks have been set up nationwide, especially near fringes of towns where compliance is low. Although there is no curfew, nearly all businesses must shut by 8 p.m. Peru announced a sharp increase in its COVID-19 death toll. There are more than 180,000 fatalities since the pandemic hit the country. The presidential palace announced this during the presentation of a report by a working group commissioned to analyze and update the death toll. Health Minister Oscar Ugarte said the government will not make new policies to face the updated figures, since this significant number of deaths were not classified as caused by COVID-19. Among Latin American countries, only Brazil and Mexico have reported higher death tolls from the disease. Questions about Peru's death toll surfaced soon after the beginning of the pandemic. Scenes of cemeteries filling up with new burials and hospitals buying refrigerated containers to act as makeshift morgues suggested the situation was far worse than the official data showed. Meanwhile, hundreds of people queue in Caracas to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Lines formed after the government called for a massive vaccination. A second phase of the immunization campaign included people over 60 years of age, prioritizing health workers during the last months. Younger people outside the targeted groups also went to health centers, expecting to get a vaccine, expanding the already long lines. Authorities let many get the vaccines without a previous registry. Some complained about misinformation and disorganization of the process. Previously, President Nicolas Maduro said Venezuela had already paid the COVAX mechanism to access the pool of vaccines. COVAX, a United Nations initiative to facilitate equitable access to immunization, provided a total of 11 million doses to Venezuela. This is 20% of what the country needs. Venezuelan authorities have reported 1,870 deaths and more than 230,000 COVID-19 positive cases. A mass immunization experiment has transformed one town in the state of Sao Paulo into an oasis of normalcy, while neighboring cities are placed into lockdowns and the pandemic rages on. Doctors, WHO-treated COVID-19 in Serrana have seen their patient loads evaporate. Life has returned to the streets in Sao Paulo state's projects, which lasted 4 months and tested Sinovac's shot in real-world conditions. Its preliminary result, published on Monday, suggests the pandemic can be controlled if 3/4 of the population is fully vaccinated with Sinovac. Most of Serrana's residents over age 18 received their 2 shots by the end of April. This population was split into 4 groups, and according to results just released, the pandemic was controlled after 3 of them had been vaccinated. 3 weeks after receipt of the second jab, the COVID-19 deaths in Serrana plunged 95%. The number of hospitalizations fell 86%, and 80% fewer symptomatic cases. Mayor Leo Capitanelli is pleased with the results. Standing beside a health screening station on the road into the city, he said people have had only light and moderate COVID-19 cases in recent weeks. A British government advisory scientist warned on Monday that Britain could be in early stages of third COVID-19 wave as the country reported more than 3,000 cases.
Another 3,383 people in Britain have tested positive for COVID-19, bringing the total number of coronavirus cases in the country to more than 4 million cases. The country also reported another 1 coronavirus-related death. The total number of coronavirus-related deaths in Britain now stands at more than 100,000 cases. These figures only include the death of people who died within 28 days of their first positive test. The progress of vaccine rollout in Britain meant this wave will probably take longer to emerge than previous one. More than 39 million people, about 3/4 of adults in Britain, have been given the first jab of the coronavirus vaccine. The home of English rugby, Twickenham Stadium, has been turned into a mass vaccination center. Up to 15,000 people can get the vaccine in one day without an appointment. This vaccination center is part of a massive effort to drive down numbers of the COVID-19 variant that was first identified in India. In other parts of the country, the army is delivering testing kits to people to try to stop its spread.
We will be back after the break with other news.
Banyak orang belum memeriksakan kondisi kesehatannya secara rutin.
Juga banyak orang yang kemudian mengkhawatirkan masalah biaya sehingga medical check-up pun urung dilakukan.
Dr. Laser bekerja sama dengan Rumah Sakit Mitra Keluarga memberikan layanan medical check-up kepada Anda, pemirsa Metro TV.
Manfaatkan kesempatan medical check-up screening jantung dan juga screening stroke diskon hingga 50%.
Dan pengumuman kode voucher diskon medical check-up akan ada di akhir acara.
Go Healthy, cara tepat hidup sehat.
Menuju rehat malam bersama program-program berita Metro TV. Rangkuman berita pilihan hari ini di dalam negeri dan mancanegara.
Saya Iqbal Himawan akan menemani Anda dalam program Top News.
Laporan perkembangan terkini serta dari dunia olahraga.
Jumpa lagi di Metro Sport.
Selamat malam pemirsa Metro Malam kembali hadir menjumpai.
Kami dampingi Anda menutup hari, memastikan malam Anda terisi dengan informasi yang baik dan terkonfirmasi. Metro TV, knowledge to elevate. Berbagi cerita seputar masalah kesehatan langsung dari sumbernya.
Saya di CAT. Di CAT hasilnya kelihatan bahwa pada penyempitan di pembuluh darah saya 85%.
Itu dokter bilang tekanan darah kamu tinggi.
Sakit di pundak, sakit nyeri sekali. Setelah itu kok lama-lama sampai ke belakang.
Bagaimana cara agar kesehatan kita tetap terjaga? Apa saja solusinya? Saksikan Go Healthy di Metro TV.
Pandemi bikin kita susah.
Semua mencoba bertahan hidup dengan hati yang gelisah.
Kita sampai di hari ini karena kita saling melindungi.
Ada yang berjuang paling depan.
Ada yang setia melindungi.
Harapan-harapan itu sekarang nyata.
Vaksin untuk Indonesia bersama SLAM.
Setiap Jumat jam 8 malam. Metro Singwen tayang setiap Senin sampai Jumat jam 7 pagi.
Kesehatan itu adalah hal penting yang harus kita jaga loh.
Saat ini, teknologi pun ikut mendukung kesehatan.
Supaya semakin sehat dan bugar.
Bersama para pakar kesehatan, kami mengulas kesehatan yang berbalut teknologi.
Simak Go Healthy di Metro TV.
You're back on World News. A Chinese climber who became the first blind Asian to scale Mount Everest said he aims to climb the highest peaks on all 7 continents and then travel to the North and South Poles. Zhang Hong, 44, is only the 3rd blind climber from anywhere in the world to reach the highest peak on the planet. Zhang became blind at 21 due to glaucoma. He trained for 5 years before climbing Everest, carrying bags packed with 30 kilograms of weight up the staircase of the hospital where he works. Hundreds of people have attempted to climb Everest from the Nepal site in May, after the government opened the mountain to foreign climbers this year. Zhang said all of his teammates were vaccinated before the expedition and had a separate camp on the mountain to distance themselves from other climbers. And in our top entertainment news tonight, Will Arnett returns to season 2 of LEGO Masters. Michael Douglas and Paul Reiser talk about the end of the Kominsky method, and thousands are allowed to attend a pilot concert in France. And that's wrapping up our show tonight. Thank you for watching World News only on Metro Globe Network. I'm Iqbal Himan. Thank you for watching. Good night.
So, what brings you to LEGO Masters?
Actor Will Arnett returns to oversee a new batch of hopeful LEGO architects in season 2 of LEGO Masters. The star, who lent his voice to Batman in the LEGO Movie franchise, including spin-off the LEGO Batman movie, says that hosting the show, with millions of LEGO pieces available on set for contestants to work into their creations, makes him feel like a giant kid in the candy store. Teams of 2 will once again go head-to-head, as challenges this time include building the bricks into an earthquake tower, a fashion show, and a demolition derby. Whittled down round by round, the top 2 teams will face off in the finale with a $100,000 cash prize for the LEGO Masters trophy winners. Season 2 of LEGO Masters premieres June 1st on Fox.
We are here today to mourn the passing of my grandfathers.
Michael Douglas says new additions to the final season of the Kominsky method make up for the absence of Alan Arkin, whose banter with and needling of Douglas was pitch perfect the first 2 seasons and earned both men Emmy nominations. Douglas said he's sad the show is ending, but that he appreciates what it has taught him.
As hard as it was to lose my friend, it's been even harder to manage his affairs.
The experience has been a joy, he said, pointing in particular to co-star Paul Reiser's comedic timing and creator Chuck Lorre's writing. He also noted that the series was shot at the height of the pandemic's second wave in the U.S. in late 2020, but the cast appreciated being able to work.
I'm sorry, Dad, but Martin is more important to
That's
me than
saying
money.
something. Reiser, whose role has expanded this season, said he was pleasantly surprised by audiences' reaction to the comedy. The Kaminsky Method Season 3 has begun to stream on Netflix
Well,
from
Sandy,
May 28th.
sweetheart, I never fell out of love with you. Really?
Thousands of people, masked and tested for the coronavirus, packed inside a Paris arena for a concert as part of a public health experiment to prepare France to host big events again. The show at the Accor Hotel's arena in eastern Paris featured 1980s French rock band Indochine and DJ Etienne de Crécy. But the attention was mostly on the concert-goers. The Paris Public Hospital Authority helped organize the event to determine whether it's safe to allow 5,000 masked people to dance together in the open pit of an indoor concert arena without social distancing. I'm still scared. The attendees were seeing the show for free, but were required to take 3 virus tests, 2 before and 1 after the concert. To further reduce risk, organizers only allowed people between 18 and 45-year-olds without underlying health conditions to participate. France has not allowed such music concerts since early 2020.
Metro TV.
Kesehatan itu adalah hal penting yang harus kita jaga loh.
Saat ini, teknologi pun ikut mendukung kesehatan.
Supaya semakin sehat dan bugar.
Bersama para pakar kesehatan, kami mengulas kesehatan yang berbalut teknologi.
Simak Go Healthy di Metro TV.
Golf Island at Pantai Indah Kapuk, a new development by Agung Sedayu Group, berada di pesisir Jakarta Utara dengan luas kurang lebih 303 hektar ini terintegrasi dengan Pantai Indah Kapuk yang terhubung dengan jembatan fantastis sepanjang kurang lebih 300 meter. Terdiri dari 12 klaster residensial dan dikelilingi ratusan unit ruko prestisius, serta hanya 5 menit menuju Bandara Soekarno-Hatta. Hanya selangkah menuju interchange Peak 1, 1 menit menuju kawasan Peak 2, serta masih banyak lagi. Bermimpi tinggal di hunian cantik? Hanya di hunian cantik di Golf Island dengan view danau, laut dan golf, serta dikelilingi dengan fasilitas raksasa mall seluas kurang lebih 38 hektar. Miliki rumah di Golf Island tipe 6x15 meter, DP 15%, cicil 24 kali, 22 juta rupiah per bulan. 1 kali cicil bisa langsung huni. Untuk informasi lebih lanjut, hubungi 02158888000.
Metro Pagi Prime Time, setiap hari live jam 4:30 pagi.
Indonesia tanah air beta, pusaka abadi nan jaya. Indonesia sejak dulu kala tetap dipuja-puja bangsa.
Indonesia tanah air beta, pusaka abadi nan jaya. Indonesia sejak dulu kala tetap dipuja-puja bangsa.
Di sana tempat lahir beta, dibuai dibesarkan bunda, tempat berlindung di hari tua sampai akhir menutup mata. Tempat berlindung di hari tua sampai akhir menutup mata.
Metro TV, a part of Media Group News.
Pemirsa, inilah headline news pukul 00 waktu Indonesia Barat. Perdana Menteri Israel Benjamin Netanyahu mengumumkan David Barnea sebagai pemimpin baru Dinas Rahasia Israel yang dikenal dengan nama Mossad Selasa waktu setempat. Barnea akan bertugas mulai minggu depan menggantikan Yossi Cohen yang pensiun setelah 38 tahun berkarir di Mossad. Mossad menjadi salah satu senjata pertahanan keamanan Israel dari segala ancaman luar negeri. Siapa yang menjadi pucuk pimpinan sangat menentukan masa depan Israel. Barnea dikenal sangat piawai untuk menormalisasi hubungan negara-negara Arab dengan Israel. Kemelut perang di Palestina mungkin telah redam untuk sementara waktu, namun warga Gaza kini tak lagi bisa menikmati air Laut Biru dan juga udara bersih akibat sejumlah fasilitas pembangkit listrik rusak dan juga belum pulih hingga kini.
Musim panas kali ini tampak berbeda dari biasanya di pantai Gaza, Laut Tengah. Selain beraroma tak sedap yang datang dari area laut, air limbah pun mengalir ke laut sebelum disaring dengan baik oleh instalasi pengolahan limbah akibat kekurangan listrik.
يعني كثير لون المية يعني مش طبيعي كثير مايل إنه للوضع السيء يعني تقدر تحكي قذر بشكل كبير.
Pantai Gaza ini memiliki panjang 40 km dan biasanya menjadi salah satu objek favorit warga Gaza saat musim panas tiba. Namun, akibat serangan Israel selama perang 11 hari terjadi, mengakibatkan kerusakan fasilitas dan infrastruktur di segala lini, termasuk pembangkit listrik, pompa air, dan sarana-sarana pengolahan air bersih di Gaza.
من كل الوزراء كل الكبار انهم يعني تصرف هذا الصحه ما ينزلش هالبحر، اصلا البحر هذا منفس للصغار وللكبار ولكل القطاع كليته منفس له، فيش منفس لا في بر ولا في بحر ولا في غير نتفة البحر، لا في سفر ولا في ايرز ولا في غيره ولا في يطلعوا هان ولا يطلعوا هان الا نتفة البحر، والبحر هذا هم بتلوث.
Otoritas Gaza mengatakan, jika situasi ini terus berlanjut, maka pihaknya akan menutup pantai dan melarang warga berenang selama musim panas tahun ini demi mencegah gangguan kesehatan di tengah pandemi COVID-19 yang masih berkelanjutan.
Demikian headline saat ini, pemirsa. Kami akan kembali untuk Anda 1 jam mendatang. Sampai jumpa.
Breaking News Metro TV. Gempa bermagnitudo 6,1 mengguncang sebagian wilayah.
Persija Jakarta sukses menjuarai Piala Menpora 2021.
Pimpinan Media Group News bertemu Wakil Presiden Kiai Haji Ma'ruf Amin.
Pemirsa, setelah viral di media sosial, 32 warga negara India ditolak masuk Indonesia.
Pemirsa, Metro TV memberikan santunan kepada anak yatim piatu di Yayasan Masjid At-Taqwa.
Dengarkan Metro TV di radio, more than just news. Streaming sekarang di metrotvnews.com dan medcom.id.
Saat ini obat ampuh untuk melawan virus corona belum ada.
Saya ingin agar protokol kesehatan, perubahan perilaku di masyarakat menjadi perhatian kita. Kita fokus kampanye pakai masker.
Semua wajib pakai masker di Media Group. Disiplin memakai masker tidak hanya untuk melindungi diri dan sesama, tapi juga untuk menjaga Indonesia kita.
Good evening. You are watching Asia Prime live on Metro Globe Network with me, Sarah Wayne.
And I'm Ralph Tabubolon. For the next 60 minutes, we will have crime stories from all over the world. And here are tonight's top stories. Japan scrambles to catch up on a frustratingly slow vaccination drive less than 2 months before the start of the already postponed Summer Olympics.
June 1st marks the annual International Children's Day. A non-profit organization, Save the Children, discovered that in Indonesia, 85% of parents with children with special needs worry that their children will have a difficult time going back to school.
Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong says restrictions aimed at curbing the coronavirus infections in Singapore were working and were set to be relaxed after June 13th.
Indonesian President Joko Widodo reaffirmed Indonesia's commitment on green development when speaking at the Partnering for Green Growth and Global Goals 2030 or P4G Summit.
The President says Indonesia has been developing a green industry zone in North Kalimantan, which will become the largest in the world.
Indonesia terbuka bagi investasi dan transfer teknologi. Indonesia tengah mengembangkan kawasan industri hijau terbesar di dunia, di Kalimantan Utara, yang mempunyai potensi besar dalam pengembangan energi terbarukan. Indonesia juga memiliki visi untuk membangun pasar karbon dan akan menjadi pemilik stok karbon terbesar di dunia.
In Malaysia, malls and most businesses closed Tuesday as the country began its second near-total lockdown to tackle a worsening coronavirus pandemic that has put its healthcare system on the verge of collapse.
Large-scale lockdown is applied after daily infections breached 8,000 on Friday and soared to a record 9,020 the following day. Most business activities will be closed for 2 weeks until June 14th, except for 17 essential sectors. Schools have already moved to online learning, and inter-district travel banned since early May. Meanwhile, restaurants can stay open for pickup and delivery services.
Only 2 in a household can travel to buy necessities within a 10-kilometer radius and 3 for medical reasons. Residents can jog in their neighborhood, but no cycling is allowed. In Kuala Lumpur, police checked vehicles entering the city. Some 800 roadblocks have been set up nationwide, especially near fringes of towns where compliance is low. Although there is no curfew, nearly all businesses must shut down by 8 p.m.
On to Japan, where the torch relay for the Tokyo 2020 in Ishikawa Prefecture had its first day celebration Monday at Sanomaru Square, Kanazawa Castle Park in Kanazawa City.
The event was scheduled to be held in 19 cities and towns in Ishikawa Prefecture has to cancel the activities on the public roads in light of the COVID-19 infection situation. It was held without spectators as a torch kiss relay, making Ishikawa the latest prefecture in Japan not conducting the torch relay on the public roads.
The Tokyo Olympic Torch Relay is scheduled to visit all 47 prefectures of Japan over 121 days. It will end July 23rd, right at the opening ceremonies taking place in capital Tokyo. Meanwhile, analysts say that reality is sinking in as Japan scrambles to catch up on a frustratingly low vaccination drive only less than 2 months before the start of the already postponed Summer Olympics.
A senior economist at the NRI, Masaya Sasaki, says it is important to set a clear and higher goal regardless of whether it could actually be realized or not. But even if that goal is achieved, about 70% of Japan's population will be unvaccinated during the Olympics, as 100,000 athletes and participants and possibly Japanese fans gather.
As Japan prepares to host the Games, infections in Tokyo and other populated areas remain at high levels, and record high numbers of serious cases are putting strains on medical systems in Tokyo and other metro areas.
Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said Monday that restrictions aimed at curbing coronavirus infections were working. He said a ban on dining out and severe limits on social gatherings were set to be relaxed after 13th of June. Singapore imposed tighter controls earlier in May after dozens of local coronavirus cases were linked to malls, hospitals, and the airport. Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong reported progress on a public vaccination drive that started in December and announced plans to inoculate students. Nearly 3/4 of the city-state's 760,000 senior citizens have received at least 1 dose of the vaccine or booked their appointments. Now, the jabs which have been offered to those aged 40 and older will be extended to students above the age of 12 from Tuesday. Lee Hsien-loong said the June holidays will be used to vaccinate students. Singapore officials have reported just over 62,000 COVID-19 cases and 33 related deaths.
On to China, where it will support couples who wish to have a third child, aiming to improve China's population structure, responding to the aging population, and to preserve the country's human resource advantages. A special meeting is being held in Beijing.
The meeting, chaired by Chinese President Xi Jinping and General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, is to hear reports on major policy measures to actively address the aging of population during the 14 five-year plan period from 2021 to 2025. The aging of its population has been increasing in recent years. In 2013, couples were allowed to have a second child if either parent was an only child. In 2016, married couples were allowed to have 2 children, phasing out the one-child policy. The meeting demanded efforts to implement a third-child policy in accordance with the law and to advance birth policies alignment with relevant economic and social policies. Education and guidance should be provided to promote marriage and family values among marriage-age young people. Efforts are needed to improve prenatal and postnatal care services, develop a universal childcare services system, promote fairness in education, increase the supply of quality educational resources, and reduce family spending on education.
Some farms and a major bridge in New Zealand's Canterbury region was damaged because of a flood. Several hundred people were told to leave their homes and schools were closed during the flooding. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said that the top priority was getting transport links working again, although it was unclear how long it would take to fix the bridge that connects the town of Ashburton to the main highway south. Crews hope to have an alternate route to the town ready by the end of the day. Ardern says farmers had been particularly hard hit with lost feed, broken fences, and debris spread across their fields. As much as 40 centimeters of rain fell over 3 days in the Canterbury region, prompting authorities to declare a state of emergency and the government to allocate 500,000 New Zealand dollars toward cleanup efforts.
Stay with us here on Asia Prime. There's more stories coming your way, including the government of Bandung, West Java, ensuring that the education authorities are ready to implement face-to-face schooling. Stay with us.
Berbagi cerita seputar masalah kesehatan langsung dari sumbernya.
Saya di CAT. Di CAT hasilnya kelihatan bahwa pada penyempitan di pembuluh darah saya 85%.
Itu dokter bilang tekanan darah kamu tinggi.
Sakit di pundak, sakit nyeri sekali. Setelah itu kok lama-lama sampai ke belakang.
Bagaimana cara agar kesehatan kita tetap terjaga? Apa saja solusinya? Saksikan Go Healthy di Metro TV. Kesehatan yang sudah tidak optimal tentu akan berakibat pada kualitas hidup Anda. Ilmu pengetahuan yang semakin berkembang dan teknologi yang semakin maju membawa sejumlah inovasi di bidang medis.
Setelah diperiksa lab, gulanya tinggi. Curiga, hati-hati. Ini adalah salah satu tanda masalah pada jantung.
Jangan anggap enteng yang namanya stroke.
Halo pemirsa, apa kabar? Senang sekali saya Tantri Murdoko dan juga Kak Ronald bisa kembali menjumpai Anda di Go Healthy, cara tepat hidup sehat.
Indonesia memiliki potensi ekonomi syariah terlengkap. Bahkan kita diprediksi menjadi kiblat keuangan dan ekonomi syariah dunia. Seperti apa ekonomi syariah Indonesia? Bagaimana kita bisa mengubah dunia lewat ekonomi syariah? Saya akan membahasnya bersama narasumber terkemuka hanya dalam Syariah Economic Talk bersama saya Gunawan Yasni setiap Kamis jam 8 malam di Metro TV.
Cara akses Magna Channel di TV digital Anda. Caranya, pilih menu atau setting. Kemudian, pilih saluran dan lakukan pencarian otomatis. Tunggu beberapa saat, Magna Channel akan muncul di daftar saluran TV digital Anda. Dan pilih Magna Channel. Selamat menonton Magna Channel, TV digital terestrial pertama dengan jangkauan nasional.
Kesehatan itu adalah hal penting yang harus kita jaga loh.
Saat ini, teknologi pun ikut mendukung kesehatan.
Supaya semakin sehat dan bugar.
Bersama para pakar kesehatan, kami mengulas kesehatan yang berbalut teknologi.
Simak Go Healthy di Metro TV.
You're back on Asia Prime. The government of Bandung, West Java, ensures that the education authorities are ready to implement face-to-face schooling.
The region of Bandung, Dadang Supriyatna, ensured this while monitoring the preparations in Bandung, saying that the face-to-face learning system is way more effective compared to the online system. Evaluations will be conducted soon after the face-to-face system is implemented.
Schools will have to provide health protocol tools required, from sinks to disinfectant sprays. The classroom will only be used at its 50% capacity, with 1 to 2 meters physical distancing from one desk to another. Before going back to school, all students are required to be fully vaccinated and show their negative swab test results.
Untuk para alumni dipersilahkan untuk melengkapi tempat yang disediakan.
Sekarang yang ada di luar lab
komputer ya. Ini kelas IPA.
June 1st marks the annual International Children's Day, which was first observed in 1950 in Geneva amidst the World Conference on Child Welfare. Save the Children found and discovered that in Indonesia, 85% of parents with children with special needs says that they worry their kids will have a difficult time going back to school. And joining us tonight is Dewi Sri Sumana from Save the Children Indonesia.
Good evening, Dewi. Thank you for joining us here on Asia Prime. Now, first, the pandemic has basically shifted the whole education system to online studying a year and counting. Everyone has to adapt. Now, based on the data gathered by Save the Children Indonesia, how much has it really affected the children in Indonesia?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, and thank you for having Save the Children. So Save the Children, through our global research across 46 countries, including Indonesia, in June-July 2020, found that 8 of 10 children said they couldn't access adequate learning materials. 7 out of 10 parents also said their children learn less. And 85% parents who have disabilities, who have children with disability, afraid and worried their children cannot get back to school. And in terms of children, out of 5 children said that nobody can help me during the learning. The other challenge, including in Indonesia, is about teacher and parents' capacity to assist children learning at home. Those facts putting children into the double, even triple risk on learning loss.
All right, Mbak Dewi. And today, June 1st, marks the World Children's Day. Speaking of Indonesia, what kind of assistance does the children in Indonesia need, especially children with special needs?
Yes, so through Save Our Education campaign that initiated by the Save the Children globally, including Indonesia, one of the campaign principles is child campaigning. Based on the children initiative, they're voicing children needs such as equal access, especially for children with disabilities, and those children who living in rural area in Indonesia. They also ask for innovative learning, online and offline. They also dreaming for teacher visit at home, and they need to have some training for their parents to understand how assist children learning at home, especially for those children with special needs. Children with special needs also said that they need to meet their friends as soon as possible because they get bored learning. They want to learning together, and they ask for child-friendly online and offline learning methods during the pandemic.
Okay, so what are truly the goals of the campaign as to try to also involve influencers that we see they also participate in this campaign?
Yeah, so Save Our Education campaign is a global movement. It aims to ensure every child has access to get the quality of education in safe environment, including in online and offline methods, and in normal or emergency situations. We need many people everywhere to tell their readers loud and clear that education is every child's right. That's why we also engaging the public figure, influencers in Indonesia to share their hopes, their concern about child rights on education. As this is a movement, we want to reach awareness of public as much as possible to achieve our campaign goal.
Okay, we certainly hope that the goals reach the target and more children's needs will be met. Thank you for joining us here on Asia Prime tonight. Dewi Sri Sumana from Save the Children Indonesia. Moving on to the next story, Indonesia's flag carrier Garuda Indonesia confirms it takes steps to restructure its debt and revamp its business to stay afloat amidst ongoing pandemic.
State-owned enterprises ministry have some options as rescue measures for Garuda. One of them is possible liquidations. A state-owned enterprises observer, Toto Pranoto, said this step is not good solutions if aiming to save the national flag carrier. Because from his perspective, Garuda Indonesia has some obligatory tasks, such as to bring cargo loads onto rural areas and provide connectivity with remote locations. So, if the government will decide to liquidate the airlines, they need to find another operator to serve those routes.
Saya kira memang opsi-opsi yang misalnya ya membuat biarkan saja kemudian Garuda as flag carrier itu berhenti dan kemudian digantikan oleh swasta yang lain juga saya kira menimbulkan beberapa problema juga ya. Jadi apakah pihak swasta gitu ya kira-kira mampu nggak untuk bisa tanda petik ya bertanggung jawab terhadap airlines baik domestik maupun internasional. Karena kan yang kena pengaruh bukan cuma Garuda ya. Yang swasta-swasta juga sama aja. Problemnya juga tidak kalah rumitnya juga dengan yang dihadapi Garuda misalnya ya. Dan jangan lupa bahwa as flag carrier juga Garuda memiliki fungsi-fungsi tambahan kan ya. Misalnya dia harus bertanggung jawab juga terhadap fungsi mereka untuk melayani misalnya ya. Jalur-jalur kritis di timur yang mungkin nggak banyak maskapai lain mau melayani itu ya. Jadi ada fungsi public service obligation yang harus dikerjakan juga. Sebagai flag carriers, ya.
Separately, an Indonesian aviation expert Alvin Lee gives other solutions for these situations. Garuda could save the fate of the company by selling non-ticketing based income services, improve its productivity and close unpopular routes, as well as reduce ticket prices to be more affordable. Customers prefer low-cost carriers nowadays. The data showed Garuda occupancy is only 20% for a single flight, totally different with its subsidiary company Budget Airline Citylink that has 40 to 50% occupancy rate. Even private operator such as Line Group could reach 70% of occupancy.
Kuncinya adalah bertahan hidup. Jadi tidak mencari lagi keuntungan, tapi bagaimana bertahan hidup, yaitu mengurangi biaya-biaya, menambah penghasilan, supaya menekan kerugian. Dan walaupun rugi, tapi kalau cash flow-nya itu positif, itu masih bisa bertahan hidup. Saya masih agak sayangkan adalah Garuda ini masih melakukan strategi harga premium dengan mematok harga tiketnya pada tarif batas atas maksimal. Yang mana itu mungkin pernah sukses pada tahun 2019 ketika itu belum pandemi, masih banyak kebutuhan orang untuk bepergian naik pesawat. Tapi ketika pandemi dan Garuda tidak mengubah strateginya, ini menjadikan Garuda kurang atraktif.
CEO of Garuda Indonesia, Irfan Satyaputra, said earlier that by having $56 million income as May of 2021 is the worst ever in the company's performance. Garuda has 70 trillion rupiahs debts with an additional of 1 trillion rupiahs every month. Jessica Wulandari for Metro Globe Network.
The Indonesian state-run oil and gas company Pertamina will reduce the use of fossil fuels by 2033. Pertamina will instead use renewable energy as an alternative. The CEO of Pertamina, Nika Widiawati, says Pertamina has planned certain strategic regulations for anticipating the impact of reducing fossil fuels. Mitigation measures that have been taken are, among others, building an eco-friendly oil refinery on crude palm oil base and other clean renewable energies. Pertamina has been building 4 new large petrochemical projects: polypropylene in Balongan, olefin in TPI, and petrochemical refineries in Balongan and Tuban's grassroots refinery. Development costs for these projects are provided by investment funds worth $92 billion allocated from 2020 to 2024.
Indonesia's pure-play gold producer RT Indonesia announced its plan for an initial public offering to Indonesia's stock exchange on Monday. The gold producer will offer 20% of its shares to the public this June. RT Indonesia Tbk, one of the largest pure-play gold mining companies in Indonesia, announced its IPO plan to Indonesia's stock exchange by offering 20% of its shares, or almost 5 billion stocks, valued at 10 rupiah for each share, to the public this month. Vice President Director of RT Indonesia, Rudi Suhendra, says the objective of the firm's IPO is to develop and accelerate its growth plan and continue improving the corporate's governance. Citigroup Sekuritas Indonesia, Credit Suisse Sekuritas Indonesia, Mandiri Sekuritas, BNI Sekuritas, and UOB Kay Hian Sekuritas were underwriters for the IPO. RT Indonesia's gold mining site is located in North Sulawesi. It has begun operations since 2011. The firm has produced a total of 1.9 million ounces, or 58 tons of gold, until December 2020. It has a gold ore reserve amounting to 3.9 million ounces, or equivalent to 121 tons as of December last year. RC, also known as Tokatindung Gold Mine, has 2 subsidiaries, Nyare Soputan Mining and Tambang Tondano Nusa Jaya. These 2 contracts will expire by 2041 with the potential of 2 time extensions.
Stay with us on Asia Prime. We'll be right back after the break with more information, including how Vietnamese were smuggled into Germany to work illegally in massage parlors and prostitutions.
Kesehatan yang sudah tidak optimal tentu akan berakibat pada kualitas hidup Anda. Ilmu pengetahuan yang semakin berkembang dan teknologi yang semakin maju membawa sejumlah inovasi di bidang medis.
Setelah diperiksa lab, gulanya tinggi. Curiga, hati-hati. Ini adalah salah satu tanda masalah pada jantung.
Jangan anggap enteng yang namanya stroke. Halo pemirsa, apa kabar? Senang sekali saya Tantri Murdoko dan juga Kak Ronald bisa kembali menjumpai Anda di Go Healthy, cara tepat hidup sehat.
Mewujudkan kemajuan industri halal memerlukan infrastruktur yang memadai. Lalu apa saja yang perlu difasilitasi?
Opportunity for Indonesia to add value to further leverage the halal Indonesia global premium brand.
The halal supply chain system is not just for Muslims, but it is for all humans.
What are the challenges of implementing?
Sharia Economic Talk with Gunawan Yasni, The Urgency of Halal Ports, Kamis 3 Juni, jam 8 malam. Kesehatan yang sudah tidak optimal tentu akan berakibat pada kualitas hidup Anda. Ilmu pengetahuan yang semakin berkembang dan teknologi yang semakin maju membawa sejumlah inovasi di bidang medis.
Setelah diperiksa lab, gulanya tinggi. Curiga, hati-hati. Ini adalah salah satu tanda masalah pada jantung.
Jangan anggap enteng yang namanya stroke. Halo pemirsa, apa kabar? Senang sekali saya Tantri Murdoko dan juga Kak Ronald bisa kembali menjumpai Anda di Go Healthy, cara tepat hidup sehat.
Momen terbaik Ibu Susi di Susi Cek Ombak.
Yang membuat dunia politik menarik untuk Bapak ini apa, Pak?
Kopiku saya tenggelamin.
Ini waktu Bu Susi lagi random banget. Nah, kalau ini pas ngerjain menteri.
Sedekat apa dengan Pak Sandi dan Pak Erick? Boleh ditelepon?
Ya, nggak ada yang ngangkat di teleponnya kacau.
Siap Ibu Host, saya lupa.
Susi Cek Ombak, setiap Rabu jam 8 malam. Disiplin pakai masker. Hindari risiko sangat tinggi penularan COVID-19 saat tidak memakai masker. Risiko penularan tinggi saat orang sakit tanpa masker berinteraksi dengan orang sehat dengan masker. Risiko penularan sedang jika orang sakit yang memakai masker berinteraksi dengan orang sehat tanpa masker. Dan risiko rendah saat keduanya memakai masker. Memakai masker dapat menurunkan risiko terinfeksi virus corona. Ayo pakai masker sekarang.
Kesehatan itu adalah hal penting yang harus kita jaga loh.
Saat ini, teknologi pun ikut mendukung kesehatan.
Supaya semakin sehat dan bugar.
Bersama para pakar kesehatan, kami mengulas kesehatan yang berbalut teknologi.
Simak Go Healthy di Metro TV.
The Merah Putih COVID-19 vaccine is entering its first phase of preclinical tests and will be ready to use in early 2022.
Jordan is devoting all its capabilities and diplomatic efforts for the service of the Palestinian cause and the realization of the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people.
Researchers at Airlangga University in Surabaya, East Java, ensures that the Merah Putih COVID-19 vaccine is entering its first phase of preclinical tests and will be ready to use in early 2022. The team is now preparing for the second phase of preclinical tests. The research coordinator, Ni Nyomantri Puspaningsi, says that the first phase of preclinical tests are still on progress in the Institute Laboratory of Tropical Disease. The tests include antibody titer tests, immunotyping, kidney, hematology, toxicity, and total blood tests. It will become the foundation for the second phase of preclinical tests. The second phase preparation also includes the use of animal macaca for testing to determine the effectiveness, dosage, and other elements to be used for humans. The first phase of preclinical tests on humans will be conducted this August.
Egypt says cases of black fungus have been reported, but in very small numbers and are being dealt with. The life-threatening condition known as mucormycosis is relatively rare, but doctors suspect that the sudden increase in the infection in India could further complicate the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Treatment of the people affected by cases in Egypt began after consultations with otolaryngologists, neurologists, and also ophthalmologists. This according to Dr. Ehab Kamal, Assistant for Medical Education to the Minister of Health. Doctors in India are fighting the fatal fungal infection affecting COVID-19 patients or those who have recovered from the disease amidst a coronavirus surge. Authorities ensure that medicines are available. In some cases have already recovered from the disease because of early diagnosis. It spreads to the respiratory tract and erodes facial structures, and sometimes doctors have to surgically remove the eye to stop the infection from reaching the brain.
Two suspects were arrested on Monday in Germany and Slovakia in raids on a group accused of smuggling Vietnamese into Germany and other European countries for large fees. They had to work off in massage parlors, brothels, and other places. Police in Berlin arrested a Vietnamese woman who lives in Berlin, while a Slovak woman was detained in Bratislava. They were alleged to be part of a larger group of suspects, several Vietnamese, one German, and two Slovaks that brought Vietnamese people to Europe on fraudulently obtained visas. They are accused of demanding payments of between 13,000 and 21,000 euros, which investigators suspect had to be worked off in nail studios, massage parlors, and apartments used as brothels. A Vietnamese man is suspected of giving hormone injections to women who worked as prostitutes in Germany to prevent them from getting unwanted pregnancies. Police found 13 people who were in Germany illegally during Monday's raids in several parts of Germany.
Moving on to Hungary, where a memorial remembering the victims of a Hungarian ship disaster in which 26 South Koreans lost their lives in the river Danube was inaugurated in Budapest on Monday. The inauguration marked the second anniversary of Hungary's worst ever civilian ship disaster. Consultations on the erection of the monument started between the Hungarian and South Korean governments at the end of 2019. The wishes of the bereaved Korean families were also considered in the process of creating this memorial. Hungarian river ship Habliani, carrying 35 passengers, mostly Korean tourists, was run over by a large tourist ship Viking Saigin on 29th of May 2019 on the river Danube near Budapest Margaret Bridge. Only 7 survived the accident, while 28 were killed. The Ukrainian captain of the Viking was charged with reckless endangerment of navigation resulting in a fatality and 35 counts of failure to render assistance. Stay with us here on Asia Prime as we have more stories coming up, including dozens of medical workers in Syria protesting a decision to grant President Bashar Assad's government a seat on the executive board of the World Health Organization.
Kesehatan yang sudah tidak optimal tentu akan berakibat pada kualitas hidup Anda. Ilmu pengetahuan yang semakin berkembang dan teknologi yang semakin maju membawa sejumlah inovasi di bidang medis.
Setelah diperiksa lab, gulanya tinggi. Curiga, hati-hati. Ini adalah salah satu tanda masalah pada jantung.
Jangan anggap enteng yang namanya stroke. Halo pemirsa, apa kabar? Senang sekali saya Tantri Murdopo dan juga Pak Ronald bisa kembali menjumpai Anda di Go Healthy, cara tepat hidup sehat.
Founding Father kami tidak mendesain stasiun TV ini hanya untuk menyajikan tontonan, tetapi lebih jauh lagi ingin memberikan tuntunan.
Jauh dari sensasi, tidak perlu jadi populis, dan yang terpenting, akurat sesuai fakta.
Halo, selamat sore pemirsa, kembali menyaksikan
Dalam setiap putaran waktu, kami sajikan informasi yang mengedukasi dan menginspirasi untuk mengawal perubahan yang lebih baik.
Tumbuh dan berkembang bersama. Dan kami ingin terus menjadi bagian dari kesuksesan Anda.
Saya informasi tadi sekaligus butuh perjumpaan
kita hari ini. 2 dekade bukan perjalanan yang singkat dan mudah. Andalah yang selalu menjadi energi atas eksistensi kami selama ini.
Untuk itu, kami ucapkan terima kasih kepada seluruh pemirsa. Terima kasih Indonesia karena telah menjadi samudera inspirasi kami. Terima kasih Indonesia.
Metro Singwen tayang setiap Senin sampai Jumat jam 7 pagi. Metro Sport setiap hari jam 10 malam. Kesehatan yang sudah tidak optimal tentu akan berakibat pada kualitas hidup Anda. Ilmu pengetahuan yang semakin berkembang dan teknologi yang semakin maju membawa sejumlah inovasi di bidang medis.
Setelah diperiksa lab, gulanya tinggi. Curiga, hati-hati. Ini adalah salah satu tanda masalah pada jantung.
Jangan anggap enteng yang namanya stroke. Halo pemirsa, apa kabar? Senang sekali saya Tantri Murdopo dan juga Pak Ronald bisa kembali menjumpai Anda di Go Healthy, cara tepat hidup sehat.
A senior Hamas official on Monday ruled out linking Gaza's reconstruction to the release of 2 Israeli civilians and the remains of 2 Israeli soldiers killed in an earlier war.
Hamas's top leader in the Gaza Strip on Monday expressed optimism about reaching a prisoner exchange with Israel, while Egyptian mediators seek to hammer out a long-term ceasefire following an 11-day war in the Gaza Strip earlier this month. Yehia Sinwar spoke after meeting with Egyptian intelligence chief Abbas Kamel, who visited Gaza a day after talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on a trip aimed at shoring up an informal ceasefire brokered by Cairo.
Sinwar says there is a real chance to make progress in indirect negotiations that could involve the release of Palestinian prisoners held by Israel and the return of 2 Israeli citizens and the remains of 2 Israeli soldiers held by Hamas since the previous war in 2014. Egypt often serves as a mediator between Israel and Hamas and was a key player in negotiating the ceasefire that ended the fighting. Kamel, who has not given public statements, is the highest-ranking Arab official to visit Gaza since 2018.
Meanwhile, Jordan is devoting all its capabilities and diplomatic efforts for the service of the Palestinian cause and the realization of the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people. Prime Minister Bishar Kassamneh told his Palestinian counterpart Muhammad Shitayyeh on Monday.
Kassamneh says during a meeting with Shitayyeh at the Prime Ministry that protecting Jerusalem and its holy sites is a Jordanian responsibility that stems from the Hashemite custodianship over Muslim and Christian sanctities in the Holy City. He added that the immediate priorities of the Jordanian diplomacy at the current stage are centered on sustaining the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, preserving the historical and legal status quo in occupied Jerusalem, stopping unilateral Israeli measures, including provocations against worshippers, halting settlement construction and land confiscation, in addition to preventing the forced eviction of Palestinians from Jerusalem's Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood.
The Prime Minister underlined the need to use the advanced status of the Palestinian cause to work towards finding a just and lasting solution leading to an independent and sovereign Palestinian state on the pre-June 4, 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Kassamneh stressed the need to give the required momentum for a political and economic effort to support the Palestinian National Authority to enable it to serve the cause and the Palestinian people.
Dozens of medical workers in rebel-held northwest Syria on Monday protested a decision to grant President Bashar Assad's government a seat on the executive board of the World Health Organization.
They said Assad is responsible for bombing hospitals and clinics across the war-ravaged country. The decision to give Syria a seat came a decade into the country's devastating civil war that has left untold numbers of civilians, including many healthcare workers, dead and injured. The selection of Syria at a little-noticed session Saturday of WHO's annual assembly, which brings together all member states of the UN Health Agency, has evoked outrage in opposition-held Idlib province. Rifat Farhat, a senior health official in Idlib, says the move contradicts all international and humanitarian laws.
Syria was among 12 WHO member states that were chosen to appoint new members for the 34-member board in an assembly vote that faced no debate nor oppositions.
The United Nations Special Envoy to Yemen, Martin Griffiths, arrived Sunday at Sana'a International Airport in Sana'a, capital of Yemen.
In his first visit to the city in a year, Griffiths will meet Houthi officials to discuss proposals including a nationwide ceasefire, the lifting of restrictions on Hodeidah ports, and the reopening of Sana'a Airport. Yemen has been embroiled in a civil war since 2014, when the Iranian-backed Houthis swept across much of the north and seized the capital, Sana'a, forcing the internationally recognized government into exile. A Saudi-led coalition entered the war the following year on the side of the government and has been fighting the Houthis since. The war has spawned over the world's worst humanitarian crisis. According to the UN envoy Martin Griffiths, his meeting with the chief Houthi negotiator Mohammed Abdul Salam took place in Oman's capital of Muscat on Thursday.
Last week, U.S. envoy to Yemen Tim Lenderking criticized the Houthis for refusing to meet with Griffiths during a previous visit. Griffith's statement says the two discussed UN plans to reopen Sana'a's international airport, the lifting of restrictions on Yemen's port of Hodeidah, and a ceasefire to relaunch negotiations.
Meanwhile, employees of Yemen's oil company were protesting Monday against the piracy of fuel ships they say is carried out by the Saudi-led coalition, which controls the country's territorial waters.
Employees and officials in the Yemeni oil company were protesting Monday in front of the UN office in Sana'a against the piracy of fuel ships that they say was carried out by the Saudi-led coalition. The coalition controls Yemen's territorial waters and has been restricting shipments into the part of the country under the control of the Houthi rebels, including Sana'a. The protest is to demand an end to piracy on fuel ships in the Red Sea and the release of the detained ships and Ammar al-Adroui, the executive director of the Yemeni oil company. The Saudi-led coalition maintains they must monitor all traffic to prevent Houthis from receiving weapons from their backer, Iran.
Thousands took part in protests across Pakistan to express solidarity with Palestinians amid the Israeli-Hamas conflict in Gaza.
People rallied in Peshawar and in Islamabad. Lawmakers gathered outside Parliament while locals chanted slogans of support for the people of Palestine and also Kashmir.
We stand with Palestine. We stand with Palestine.
And we still have more stories coming your way, including getting warmer.
Yes, that is why, Ralph, people flocked to the UK coast on Monday as the bank holiday turned out to be the warmest day of the year. Stay with us on Asia Prime.
Kesehatan itu adalah hal penting yang harus kita jaga loh.
Saat ini, teknologi pun ikut mendukung kesehatan.
Supaya semakin sehat dan bugar.
Bersama para pakar kesehatan, kami mengulas kesehatan yang berbalut teknologi.
Simak Go Healthy di Metro TV.
Editorial Media Indonesia. Opini surat kabar terpercaya hadir di pagi hari Anda. Membahas isu secara tajam dan mengulas peristiwa dengan lebih mendalam. Tampil matang dengan dialog interaktif. Mengajak Indonesia menyikapi permasalahan bangsa dengan terukur dan cerdas. Editorial Media Indonesia, Senin sampai Sabtu, live jam 7:30 pagi.
Pandemi menguras energi. Kini saatnya bangkit lagi.
Vaksin untuk Indonesia. Setiap Jumat jam 8 malam. Untuk meningkatkan kualitas siaran, Metro TV migrasi ke satelit merah putih Telkom 4 dengan parameter. Pastikan tetap terinformasi dengan tayangan lebih jernih bersama Metro TV.
Welcome back on Asia Prime. People flocked to the UK coast Monday as the bank holiday turned out to be the warmest day of the year so far. Brighton Beach and Pier were popular as people gathered to enjoy the higher temperatures. 24.6 degrees centigrade was recorded in Kinloss in Scotland on Monday, which surpassed the previous high for 2020 set on March 30th. At Kew Gardens in southwest London when the temperature reached 24.5 degrees. Temperatures were predicted to reach 25 degrees in parts of the UK later on as people enjoyed the long weekend and new freedoms after the lifting of many lockdown restrictions.
A Chinese climber who became the first blind Asian to scale Mount Everest says he aims to climb the highest peaks on all 7 continents and then travel to the North and South Poles. Zhang Hong, age 44, is only the 3rd blind climber from anywhere in the world to reach the highest peak on the planet. Following his guides and Sherpas, he reached the summit May 24th and returned safely to Kathmandu. He says that he was inspired by a blind American climber, Eric Weihenmayer, who scaled Everest back in 2001. Zhang became blind at 21 due to glaucoma. He trained for 5 years, before climbing Everest, carrying bags packed with 30 kilos of weight up the staircase of the hospital where he works. Hundreds of people have attempted to climb Everest from the Nepal side in May after the government opened the mountain to foreign climbers this year. Zhang says all of his teammates were vaccinated prior to the expedition and had a separate camp on the mountain to distance themselves from other climbers.
As Cuba continues to advance its own COVID-19 vaccine efforts, the government is trying to think of ways to safely reopen the island for tourists, including offering its local vaccine to foreigners. Local authorities in the health and tourism sector believe that vaccinating their own citizens first and making the vaccines available to foreign visitors will not only safeguard the country's population, but could also lead to a resurgence in much-needed tourism revenue. 16 kilometers from the city of Cienfuegos is Rancho Luna, a 268-room resort and an example of what is being done to attract visitors once the entry of visitors to the island becomes more flexible. Before COVID-19 in 2020, Cuba aimed to welcome some 4.5 million visitors. In the event, only 1 million visitors arrived in the midst of the worldwide pandemic. Cuba is the only Latin American country with its own vaccine candidates. In total, 5 products have been developed, 2 of which, Abdala and Soberana 02, have already completed phase 3 of their clinical studies and were administered to 400,000 people as of March, although the results are still being analyzed.
Lucas Postelberger led a stunning breakaway to win stage 2 of the Criterium du Dauphin from Brioude to Saugus in France. The Bora-Hansgrohe rider and 4 other riders broke clear of the field early in the race, but with 61 kilometers to go, they became a quartet. 30 kilometers later, it was only Postelberger and Shane Archbold who were away in front. However, the peloton eventually reeled in Archbold as well. The Austrian was alone as he assaulted Cote de la Forêt de Porcheres, and with 10 kilometers to go, the stage was his to lose. Several riders launched attacks in the closing stages, but Postelberger was able to hold out, crossing 11 seconds ahead of the peloton to take the overall lead.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has married his fiancée, Carrie Symonds, in a small private ceremony. The couple wed Saturday at Westminster Cathedral in front of a small group of friends and family, Johnson's office said on Sunday, confirming newspaper reports that were published overnight. Aerial footage taken Sunday showed an open-sided marquee and gazebo set up in the garden of 10 Downing Street. The couple have reportedly sent save-the-date cards to family and friends for a celebration on July 30th, 2022. Johnson and Symonds, a Conservative Party insider and also an environmental advocate, announced their engagement in February 2020.
And back to France, where fans have started streaming into the revamped Roland Garros for the 2021 French Open. The Parisian Grand Slam is back in May sunshine after being rescheduled last year due to the coronavirus pandemic. Only 5,400 visitors will be allowed to enter the venue each day for the first 10 days of the tournament, which is an increase on the daily cap of 1,000 last year. France is currently under stage 2 of the government's coronavirus restrictions, and residents are still subject to a 9 p.m. curfew. This means players will be playing to an empty arena for 9 out of the 10 night sessions, which are introduced for the first time in the French Open this year. From June 9th, capacity will be increased to up to 13,000 visitors per day.
Professor Stephen Hawking's entire office and archives have been acquired for the British nation. His first book, A Brief History of Time, sold 10 million copies. He was honored by world leaders, appeared in several TV cameos, and a movie about his early life starring Hollywood star Eddie Redmayne was released in 2014. Hawking's achievements are all the more remarkable given the extreme physical restrictions of his condition, ALS, also known as motor neuron disease. Diagnosed at 22 while studying at Cambridge, he was initially told he would die within 2 years, but stunned doctors by living for more than 50 more years before passing away in 2018 at the age of 76. His trademark wheelchairs and the communication equipment that gave Hawking his distinctive robotic voice sit alongside his landmark papers on theoretical physics and his scripts from his appearance on The Simpsons. His entire office is being preserved by the Science Museum. Hawking's own family made the decision to allow his possessions to become part of public collections.
From Hawking to Van Gogh, post-impressionist artist Vincent van Gogh's masterpieces come to life in a breathtaking exhibit called Immersive Van Gogh, taking place at Pier 36, 70,000 square foot facility located in Manhattan's Lower East Side. The exhibition provides history about Van Gogh, his life and his art, while also putting guests in the middle of his work. It features mirrored sculptures that reflect the artwork. Immersive Van Gogh toured in various cities around the world before arriving in New York. The creative talents behind the show include creator Massimiliano Siccardi, creative director New York David Corrins, and composer Luca Longobardi. The exhibition uses technology to combine art and music in an immersive experience. As New York lifted most of its coronavirus capacity restrictions on businesses, Van Gogh was the perfect artist to usher visitors from the dark times of the pandemic back into normalcy.
Still more news from New York. A Harry Potter store is set to open in the city. And here's the full story.
The owners of the Harry Potter franchise of books and movies are betting that tourism will make a big comeback soon in New York City, as they're set to open a Harry Potter themed store in Manhattan. The two-level store features hundreds of collectible Potter-themed items for sale, books, as well as displays featuring real props from the movies.
We think right now, with the pandemic kind of turning a corner, we feel it's a great time to open the store, and we hope in the future we can encourage tourism back to this area as well.
The store is meant to be an interactive experience with various rooms dedicated to themes from the film. More than 50 different types of wands are available for purchase, alongside the real wands held by the cast on screen. The store is scheduled to open on June 6th.
And that ends Asia Prime for tonight. I'm Sarah Wayne.
And I'm Ralph Tabubolon, and thank you for watching Metro Globe Network. We'll see you tomorrow.
Metro TV. Bangun pagi dengan suasana hati baik, siap memenangi hari dan dengan semangat untuk menyapa Selamat Pagi Indonesia. Kami siap hari ini. Apapun tantangan yang datang saat kita menjalani hari, pasti membuat kita menjadi lebih baik. Dan hey, kita sudah punya segudang info baru yang inspiratif dan seru. Lengkap ada di sini, di pagi hari.